I'm not sure if you're aware, Jake, but we're pretty big fans of Guy Ritchie.
I was aware.
Jacob and I.
I'm aware.
We've pretty much seen all of his movies, and we're just big fans of him, and we'll go see any movie he puts out. And recently on the channel, we went to go see Operation Fortune Rustigire, which came out a month ago, and we talked about it on this channel. And then last weekend, he released another movie, which was Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
That's the full title.
Yeah, that's like Fellini Satyricon.
Yeah, we have two.
Guy Ritchie's The Covenant.
Right.
Yeah, Jack and I went to go see it, like, first day it came out.
Yeah.
It was actually a good experience compared to what we, expected, and also just compared in general to his last picture, Rustigire.
Yeah. I went away from Rustigire probably liking it more than most people just because there were fun moments in it. There were a lot of drag-on, like, boring moments in it, right? And I think it tainted my expectations a little bit for this movie. Plus, on top of that, it's, like, very much like a pro-military movie.
Yeah.
And I'm never the biggest fan of those movies. But this movie really surprised me with how much I liked it and how good I thought the storytelling was. He was on his game this time.
Yeah, and this movie was definitely a more serious movie tonally. His most serious movie he's ever done. I don't know what else can, like, compare to this movie, like, thematically. That's serious. Nothing else really that he's done is quite like it.
The beach or
the island.
The island.
No. Yeah, but this movie, he kind of just, like, made it very, very cohesive story about this guy. It's just, like, a very easy to follow story compared to Operation Fortune. Operation Fortune, he's doing this ensemble piece, this kind of witty spy ensemble piece, and he jumps around a lot. It's kind of hard to know what the fuck is going on. Like, you just have this basic idea about, like, oh, these guys are penetrating this arms dealer's circle, and that's kind of like but you don't really know when they're on the mission. I don't know what the fuck they're actually trying to do. With this movie, it's literally about a group of soldiers that's trying to find bomb making facilities that the Taliban is doing in Afghanistan in 2018 and stuff. Step by step, them going and, like, penetrating this facility, and the plan fails, and this guy, the interpreter that they hire, actually is, like, him and Jake Gyllenhaal are the only ones who survive, but he has to, like, trek him across, like, this terrain for however long.
With Taliban chasing them.
Yeah, with Taliban chasing him.
Yeah. He's, like, he becomes, like, one of the top 10 most wanted by the Taliban, and later on in the movie, because he, like, dragged Jake Gyllenhaal across enemy lines for, like, God knows how many miles. It felt like an eternity.
It felt like Jake Gyllenhaal was out for, like, a month.
Like a month, yeah.
Like, it was insane, dude.
Yeah. And he basically, Jake Gyllenhaal's character is this really respected sergeant in the army, and his life is saved by this interpreter, and he brings him back home alive. But then when he comes home, he finds out the interpreter is still stuck in Afghanistan, and so he plans a rescue mission to go back into Afghanistan, like, by himself, to, like, save this dude that saved his life.
Yeah.
And it's called the Covenant because a covenant is made up of a bond, a privilege, or something like, I don't know.
A pledge, or like,
they say it at the end of the movie. There's a title card.
Yeah, and that's a very thematically, like, this movie, when you watch it, there's not, like, a standout Guy Ritchie, like, stylistically, but there are things in it that are very Guy Ritchie. And like, in the beginning,
the name cards, and then, like, dude, just that like overhead helicopter shot, like the symmetry he has of, like, them, like, following the car at the beginning. I was like, that's really, it has, like, a Guy Ritchie style to it.
And then there's a scene where they, like, break open the beers and stuff, and they're grilling the steak on the thing, because Guy Ritchie loves steaks.
Yeah, he loves steaks.
Really?
Yeah. All of his movies are, like, a steak in there, and it's the sort of, like, gentlemanly bond that men have in, like, times of, like, crisis. And, like,
I found that really Guy Ritchie. Yeah, the bond of this
men.
Brotherhood that they sort of forged together. I found this movie actually really watchable, like, extremely engaging, and, like you said, doesn't have the Guy Ritchie isms, like the winky nature of, like, the spy, Operation Fortune and stuff like that.
Very grounded, serious,
extremely serious. I found that, like, the two lead performances by Gyllenhaal and the guy who plays Ahmed, the interpreter, were, like, fantastic. Like, really physically demanding, really emotionally, like, kind of taxing, like, what they have to go through. And, like, it's very cut and dry. The story's really standard issue, but
for sure,
it's really well executed. And, like, Guy Ritchie undeniably is a really just stable director and knows how to make the right choices to make like the pace work. The action sequence is really engaging, and like the interactions between characters.
The action is great, intense, and I think with this movie compared to Operation Fortune was produced by like Miramax, like that was like the biggest studio name behind it, whereas The Covenant is like an MGM production, so they're putting in like so much more production value, so you can tell with like the action and the way it's shot and the sets and everything, they like really put a lot behind it, and it was like executed very well with Guy Ritchie. And all the action and like explosions and the gunfights and shit, it was very grounded and stuff.
I want to talk about a few points. So the CGI took me out of the movie. I don't know if you noticed, but all the smoke in it, it's all CGI. Every time a helicopter like goes through it, I just think it looks bad. Like when there's the plane shot, it's like all CGI and stuff. That like took it out of groundedness, and then I felt like the shooting was like not grounded at all. You know, it was like boom boom, shoots two people in the head, they're dead. Boom boom.
Right, it's PG-13, right? Wasn't the movie PG-13 because
it was?
I could be wrong, but it didn't feel as violent because I don't remember a lot of blood or anything. I could be wrong, but I know what you mean with the shootouts. They do feel very Call of Duty-esque in a way.
Oh, this is definitely Guy Ritchie's Call of Duty.
Yeah,
it definitely feels like a Call of Duty mission where it's like you're literally following one person at a time into this like shit, and like you gotta extract, and like the enemies felt like very much like Call of Duty. Like, one truck shows up, another truck shows up, another truck shows up. It's like, oh, we're getting overrun, we gotta retreat back. Like shit like that.
There's an AC-130 scene that's like
at
the very end.
Dude, if you love Call of Duty, then you'll love this movie. Probably. But I would have to agree with some of the CGI. There were some helicopters shots, some plane shots of them flying. That was clearly some CGI, and then also there were some typical predictable things about the movie when it comes to the style. But also Jake Gyllenhaal definitely like does an amazing job. Yeah. Like we're getting like a premier star in a Guy Ritchie movie compared to like the usual suspects of like Jason Statham, blah 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 blah. Like with Jake Gyllenhaal's like a real actor doing like a big movie with Guy Ritchie and stuff. When Jack and I were walking to the movie theater, we were like, there's definitely going to be some slow motion shots of Jake Gyllenhaal like going through some shit and like a close up of his face in slow mo, going through some stress. Yeah. And there's probably like 10 of those shots in that movie.
Oh, yeah, there's like 10 scenes of him just
there's so many shots of Jake Gyllenhaal like, whoa. Like, and you can sit in the hand close, like blood, like
when he gets the gun.
Another like military trope that's going to be in the movie is going to be like him arguing with like his superiors about something that's like so obviously should be done, which is this, like these interpreters should get green cards.
He gives like a really heartfelt speech to his like commanding officer about getting the green cards for him.
He's like, I have a hook in me.
So patriotic and so emotional. Gyllenhaal sells it really well, though. It's like
he really does. Yeah. But that speech, I was like, oh, that stood out to me. But the end of it, where he's like, and I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I saved your life 8 years ago. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck?
It's like always a different like backstory they introduce.
Exactly.
I'm like the hero of the military, you know. It's like,
but it does a good job of not just vilifying Afghanistan. It actually has like a whole other perspective of the people who were living in Afghanistan during the time.
Yeah.
Like going through the war and shit.
Dar Salim, the guy that plays the interpreter, he's so good in this. He really matches Jake Gyllenhaal so well. Two things, alright? I might be reading too much into this movie. Jake Gyllenhaal first meets Dar Salim's character. He's like, alright, bring him forward. And like he's like talking to like the interpreter. And he's basically testing him and like how well he like understands English, right? And it's like, what's that? Oh, that's an engine. He's like, are you patronizing me? He's like, I would never do that to you. I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal like really makes a point to go beyond just being like this military dude. Like he's a believable person in this movie, and he really does like care about the people. Maybe he's not at the beginning as connected to his interpreters and like what they go through in Afghanistan. He's more of like on the side of U.S. military. But definitely by the end, like we have this understanding between two cultures. There's like really special. And then the other thing is like they never address it, but like Jake Gyllenhaal's whole entire unit's wiped out. Like,
Yeah,
really
they
his
donated.
interpreter is like the last person alive. So it's like, that's another catalyst for like why he's doing what he's doing, is because like he's grieving so much, like, and they never address that.
I do love the scene. I like how it is subtly portrayed, but like after they escape, like him and the interpreter guy are just sitting, kind of like hiding away from the Taliban, and Gyllenhaal's just having like he's about to explode, but he doesn't. But then the interpreter guy's looking at him. You know he wants to say something like, "I'm sorry for you lost your whole fucking squadron or whatever," but he doesn't say anything either. They kind of just like brush over it because they know they know what just happened. Like, it's inexplainable. Like, how could you rationalize it?
Yeah.
And that's how they kind of brush over it. I thought that was like a really well acted, really well done. Like, for Guy Ritchie to make a really subtle moment like that is actually kind of like rare for him, because he's
not subtle.
he's not a subtle director ever, and this felt like his most subtle sort of. He wanted to service the story as much as possible and not put himself into like any stylistic choices or
I think he might have felt like it would have been in bad taste, considering the whole war that went on in Afghanistan. We were there for like 20 years.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
But it's cool how he does this story with these two guys from completely separate backgrounds, from completely separate cultures, are able to find a bond through this like crazy adventure that they go through. Jake Gyllenhaal, he does a good job, but he is kind of just playing Jake Gyllenhaal as a serious sergeant, though. It's not like he's playing like a Nightcrawler type guy or like Denis Villeneuve, like Prisoners type character, or shit like that, or like even Michael Bay. And Michael Bay, he's playing more of a character than I think in this. And this one, he is kind of just playing this American like grizzly, tough sergeant guy.
Totally. I wanted to ask you guys about Gyllenhaal, because like I think in the 2010s he was working with more like auteurs in a way, and like he wanted to do more showy work in a way. Now he's kind of.
And then he made Velvet Buzzsaw.
Yeah, like he that was definitely a bad misstep. But like now he's kind of. It seems like he wants
Nocturnal Animals. That was
right.
Nocturnal Animals.
He was doing really art. He seems like he's turned away from the art, artistic side of him, and he's doing more like Ambulance and this, and working with like really masculine directors.
Yeah.
Kind of becoming like
male fantasy director.
Yeah, like he's doing the UFC. He's doing the Roadhouse remake. Like he was like
that's
UFC,
right. That's right.
UFC thing. Like he's really gone towards the masculine side of his like star persona, and doesn't really do the Villeneuve stuff or the Nightcrawler stuff. So I don't know. Do you guys want him to do more like work with more auteur directors, or just keep doing the star thing?
Well, obviously, I think he does want to do it. It's just that when it comes to the trajectory of an actor's career, getting into all that auteur stuff, like that's almost like a wave. And then it kind of like your relevancy almost a little bit falls off. And other guys coming in, like fucking Joaquin Phoenix or like Robert Pattinson is on that auteur wave for sure and stuff. And I think it's just a matter of, timing in an actor's career. Like Ryan Gosling is also a guy who did a lot of auteur shit in the 2010s, and now he's like, he's kind of like
a staple and stuff.
Yeah, he's not really like. I think it's just because your career path as an actor is just kind of a little bit like dicey when it comes to directors, and when you're hot and when you're not. When people want to work with you, and there's other people that come in, like younger generation comes in, you get older, and you get like Timothée Chalamet getting all these other roles and stuff like that. And
even Tom Cruise did that, because he started out doing like standard issue movies, then he fell down the rat. Like in the 90s he worked with like Kubrick, PTA, all these people, and now he's like he found his niche. So I wonder if like Gyllenhaal like found a niche of like he wants to portray soldiers and like bank robbers and like do a Marvel movie and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, he was in Spider-Man.
That's right. Yeah.
Dude.
So it's just an interesting path, because like
it's just like I think it's also a little bit on like cashing out too as well, right? Just kind of like seeing what you can get done before your career tapers off, because like an actor's career is like, dude, it's so unpredictable. It's like there's only like a few people who can like take time off and just do an art house movie and then dip out and then come back. Like there's only like a handful of like actors like that. And Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't think he's necessarily like on that level of like a DiCaprio,
no,
like Bradley Pitt or something like that. Like Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, he's only worked with auteur directors his whole career.
Joaquin Phoenix,
he's never. He's always been avant-garde minded. I feel like.
No, Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't think he's on that level, but I do think he's an amazing actor.
I do too.
He's amazing, dude. I love like Prisoners, Nightcrawler,
He's
Jake
Enemy.
Gyllenhaal.
He's incredible. That way, like when he was a Nightcrawler and
Yeah.
Prisoners, I think the peak of his career in terms of like talent.
I'm always curious though, like, because we don't know these people. Like, how similar are people's roles they're portraying, like who they actually are, like things they liked in their life. Like, is Jake Gyllenhaal like kind of like into this kind of stuff, more masculine stuff, like in his real life? Like, is this something that like he finds like that he can commit himself to easier, and it's more fulfilling to him? Then if so, like, I think like I'm happy for him. You know? But like. Yeah, like you said, Felix, like really well said. I think there's a lot of people that are willing to work in like the auteur sphere. It is like a wave.
And it's a risk to. I think sometimes maybe even it is a little bit of a risk to work with auteurs because you're not going to get maybe the exposure, and maybe if you do that too much, you're kind of going to fall under the radar of like the mainstream agencies, and like people aren't going to be. It's all like a business at the end of the day too. How you go about your career and like what people suggest for you to do and whatever. But obviously, I think Jake Gyllenhaal wants to be the greatest artistic actor he can be. You know, I don't think he's phoning it in. I just think it's just like a good career move to like go back to making more like blockbuster films because it's just good for money and stuff. And like you have this commodity of yourself. Like you should go through with it as much as you can before it gets stale, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And I think he puts in commitment and artistry even into his performances.
He's committed for sure.
He's never phoned in a performance I've ever seen, in my opinion. And like, even at like Ambulance last year, honestly, that was like one of my favorite performances last year.
Ambulance is so great.
He was crazy.
He was so insane. He matched the energy of Michael Bay's filmmaking better than most actors like ever have, in my opinion.
I think so too.
Like back to like Nick Cage and The Rock and like Will Smith and shit back in the day. Like I think it's like on that level. So I wanted him to keep doing this stuff, honestly. I think it's really interesting. And maybe like in a decade when he's like 50, he'll do like another, you know, he'll work with Ari Aster or something. You never know.
Yeah. We'll always like, I think he's always going to be in the mind of the American like audiences. But it is crazy he did a Michael Bay movie last year and then the Guy Ritchie movie.
I know. It's like, it's definitely a trend.
I also feel like part of it's too, like he wants to, he's at a point in his career where he wants to work with certain directors he's never worked with.
True. Yeah, I mean, who doesn't want to work with Michael Bay? I guess if you make like masculine action movies like that, it's like that's the peak of if you want to work with Michael Bay. As Guy Ritchie fans, though, like what's the apex of Guy Ritchie? Like, what's his best movie, in your opinion?
His best movies, Lock, Stock, and then Snatch.
I was gonna say, like,
Snatch, I mean, obviously, Lock, Stock is probably my favorite one, and then The Gentleman or Snatch. But, like, I think when it comes to, like, his new wave career, like, him as a grown-up man, like, The Gentleman is my favorite one. It's, like, all the ingredients in it.
Yeah.
But just, like, more of a now type movie, whereas Lock, Stock, it's, like, him, like, a young, ambitious dude, British guy in the pub, like showing that world off, and he's not necessarily there anymore.
No, he's not.
We can't expect Lock, Stock, and stuff, but I think we can expect more like
The
gentleman type shit. Sure. You know what I mean?
He's making a TV show, and then what is it? Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare.
Oh
is his next movie.
Yeah. Bro, I look forward to that shit, bro. That looks fucking sick.
He works, his work schedule is insane. Like, since, like, the mid-2010s, he's put out, like, 1 or 2 movies a year since. Yeah. Like, at post-Sherlock Holmes, it's, like, pretty crazy how much he's put up.
Well, he definitely does a one for you, one for them.
Yeah, like Aladdin.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like a lot of people have the stigma of, like, oh, hired hand directors, right? I kind of respect him that, like, he's not afraid to do a movie for them. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I'm such a fan of him. I might be biased, but like, he's not gonna put his pride before stuff like that.
When we go see a Guy Ritchie movie, we go see it because like we're gonna get that personality in it.
Yeah.
Like he's an auteur working in like a more mainstream, high budgeted medium, but we're like, what makes him satisfying? Like with this movie, it wasn't totally Guy Ritchieism, but there was a certain flavor in it that like I'm like, okay, now I'm watching a Guy Ritchie movie. If this was like a fucking McG movie, none of this would be like in here or whatever like type other director, like Antoine Fuqua type vibe. Like this is like he does Antoine Fuqua type movies, but he has like the auteur spirit to it.
You could see like David Ayer or someone directing The Covenant too. It might have been
Sam Mendes.
It'd be much more like self-serious or just not the right tone, but I always find it interesting that he has become a studio for a filmmaker, like that really reliable one, Because like he started out with Lock, Stock, and Snatch, which are so like against the system, like sort of punk rock movies that are very stylish and like kind of like fuck you to the system in a way. Like with Danny Boyle is the same way. Like he started with Trainspotting, like these British directors who probably grew up loving punk music and stuff and had that mentality.
Yeah.
Matthew Vaughn was one of them too, and now they're like, it's cool that they've adapted this studio system too, though, because then they can go off and make a giant, The Gentleman or Wrath of Man and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, his most underrated work, Guy Ritchie, is Rock and Roll.
Rock and Roll.
Yeah, Rock and Roll and Revolver. I actually really like Revolver a lot. I mean, a lot of people don't. I actually did like that movie a lot. I think my favorite Guy Ritchie movies are the gangster British fucking shit that goes down.
Yeah.
The,
I mean, that's what everyone would say, right?
Like, no one would really say like King Arthur or like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. But
those Sherlock Holmes were good. They were good. They were like well done.
Sherlock Holmes is good. But obviously, like the British gangster shit that he does is like the top tier of the Guy Ritchie stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
Snatch and Lock, Stock were two movies in hype because like we all went through that phase where you're like, I want to watch all the gangster crime movies, and then like I watched Tarantino's stuff and Scorsese, and then you get eventually like, my friend loved Guy Ritchie in high school, said like Snatch and Lock, Stock are like the peak of 90s new wave of like post Pulp Fiction cinema. Like they really are though.
Well, the reason why I discovered Lock, Stock, and Snatch is because when I first discovered Tarantino, I was watching Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and like Jackie Brown and shit. And then when I went to IMDb for Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, there was like movies like this, or movies like this, and it was like Lock, Stock, and Snatch.
Yeah.
I don't know who Guy Ritchie was. I don't know who the fuck he was. And I looked those movies up and I watched them. I'm like, oh fuck, these are
so good.
These are sick as fuck.
One of the first like auteur filmmakers I discovered, and he's been my favorite ever since. But like, I think I discovered him because I watched Smoking Aces.
Smoking Aces. It's all in that Matthew Vaughn wave. Like Matthew Vaughn produced wave British crime stuff that goes down like Layer Cake.
Layer Cake's great, dude. That's great.
I like Matthew Vaughn quite a bit too.
I think he's underrated.
Yeah. Oh, he really is.
I think he's really underrated. But we're just Guy Ritchie fans. Even if he's not putting out like his best work or the best show that's coming out in movies, like I'm gonna go see it just because of the brand of it. I like the brand of it. Operation Fortune had like this sort of like flat lighting gloss, cheaper. It was a cheaper quality compared to The Covenant.
Yeah, it really was.
It just wasn't as like higher production value compared to the Covenant. But the thing about The Covenant, like, if The Covenant was coming out and it was just some random director or whatever, it was just like Jake Gyllenhaal war movie, I'd probably been like, dude, this looks like bullshit.
I wouldn't have seen it.
I wouldn't have seen it. Yeah, I go see
Antoine Fuqua or something.
Yeah, I go and see it because of the name, the brand. You know what I'm saying? That's like why I went to. Otherwise, I would have never seen this. I would have been like, "This looks like a piece of shit movie."
That's most war movies that come out because they're very samey, and they have the same sort of, like you were saying about the pro-American military, which this movie didn't have because Guy Ritchie's British. He doesn't really have this sort of mentality that like really horny for the military.
But I feel like it did sometimes.
It did sometimes. I feel like it was more the camaraderie of the soldiers versus like. Because in the end, like, the American system kind of, like, fucked them over because they weren't able to immigrate him over. It was kind of, like, even exposing how fucked up it is that we're not able to save people.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily propaganda. Like,
no, I don't think so.
Movie. Because they definitely, in the end, they're like, no, we're not going to go help you save this guy. Like, fuck that. You know, they actually...
Exactly.
They actually kind of turn against him in a way, and he has to take it into his own hands and risk his own life just with a truck and drive into the fucking Taliban.
So it's
that was fucking ridiculous at the end, dude. Where he's like, he goes there, like spends like what, like $500,000 to like get this private like team.
They remortgage his house, like he said. I think with his wife, and he's probably gonna be in debt forever to just save that guy. But it was you wanted him to do it so badly. You're like, fucking get that guy out of there.
Which is like so badass too. Like I'm not like a big like dude, but that was like very much like. Fuck yeah.
It was a great bromance. And the end's ridiculous too before the AC-130 like saves them.
Oh dude,
it's an entire fucking army. Like,
no, it was awesome.
I
loved it. I actually like it really brought the end. The ending was very explosive and I liked that. Like when I say with movies, you know, like a lot of times they can be really engaging in the beginning, you get some cool action or whatever, and then it kind of tapers off and the ending isn't as good as the beginning. But I think that this one was like he really like just blows all that shit up, and it's like crazy, and it's like very engaging. Yeah.
And I love the way it ended too. Like it ended on where it ended, not like, oh, you see them in America. Oh, he's working
He
at
meets
his
his
auto
family,
shop.
yeah.
You know, like I don't want the Fast and Furious ending. I like the ending where it's just like hands on them, just like the recognition they have between each other on the plane.
Like, what would you say is your favorite like Guy Ritchie that's like new wave, not like the old?
The new wave Guy Ritchie?
Yeah.
Man, I need to see more of it.
Have you seen the Gentleman?
I haven't seen The Gentleman or Wrath of Man.
You haven't seen
yet.
The Gentleman?
No.
I could have sworn you watched it with us.
Bro,
No,
we
dude.
have-
I have always said I want to watch it with you guys.
We have it here, bro.
Yeah.
To be honest, I haven't loved anything yet because I haven't watched the stuff that's supposed
The Gentleman is his best movie since his like early days.